Let me start by saying something that might make you uncomfortable, but discomfort is usually where truth lives. Average is not something that just happens to you. It's not a life sentence handed down by your background, your education, your age, or your circumstances. Average is a choice. And before you push back on that, before you start listing reasons, hear me out. Every day, consciously or unconsciously, we vote for the kind of life we're going to live. Our habits cast the ballot. Our standards count the votes. And over time, the results show up as a life that either stretches us or one that shrinks us. Most people don't wake up and say, I want to be average. Nobody puts that on their vision board, but they do wake up and choose comfort. They choose familiarity. They choose the path that demands the least emotional energy. And slowly, without realizing it, those choices stack up. You skip the hard conversation. You postpone the difficult task. You tell yourself tomorrow will be better, that next year you'll be different. And one day you look up and realize you didn't fall into average. You walked into it step by step, excuse by excuse. Psychologically, the human brain is wired to conserve energy. It wants safety. It wants predictability. It wants routines that don't challenge its sense of identity. That's not a flaw, it's biology. But here's the problem. Growth demands energy. Growth demands uncertainty. Growth demands that you regularly do things that challenge the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. Average thrives where self-awareness is low and self-justification is high. As long as you can explain away your limitations, you never have to confront them. Philosophically, this comes down to standards, not goals, standards. Goals are things you hope to reach someday. Standards are what you refuse to fall below today. Average people have dreams, but they have low standards. They say they want more, but they tolerate less. They tolerate being late. They tolerate mediocrity in their work. They tolerate relationships that drain them. They tolerate a version of themselves they wouldn't even respect in someone else. And tolerance is powerful because whatever you tolerate eventually becomes your normal. If you want to stop being average in 2026, the first shift has to be internal. You have to raise your standards in private before the results show up in public. That means asking yourself hard questions when no one is watching. Why do I quit when things get uncomfortable? Why do I wait for permission to take my life seriously? Why do I accept explanations from myself that I would never accept from someone I admire? These questions aren't meant to shame you. They're meant to wake you up. There's also an identity component here. Many people are loyal to an old version of themselves. They stay average not because they lack ability, but because they're afraid of outgrowing who they've been. Excellence requires separation, sometimes from people, sometimes from habits, sometimes from beliefs that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. And that separation can feel lonely. But the truth is, average feels crowded because everyone is there. Growth feels lonely at first because not everyone is willing to pay the price. Eric Thomas often talks about hunger, about wanting success as badly as you want to breathe. But hunger isn't just emotional intensity. It's a mindset. It's a refusal to negotiate with excuses. It's waking up and saying, I'm not entitled to results, but I am responsible for effort. Average thinking asks, what's the minimum I can do and still get by? Elevated thinking asks, what's the maximum of who I can become if I fully commit? That question alone can change how you move through your day. And here's the reality check. Deciding to rise doesn't mean you'll never fail. It means you stop using failure as an identity. You fail, you learn, you adjust, and you keep moving. Average quits when the initial excitement wears off. Growth-oriented people expect resistance. They understand that friction is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that something meaningful is happening. So as we step into 2026, don't just change your calendar, change your internal agreements. Decide what you will no longer accept from yourself. Decide what kind of effort is non-negotiable. Decide that comfort will no longer be your compass, because the moment you stop choosing average, average loses its power over you. Once you make the decision to rise, once you've acknowledged that average is not an accident but a choice, the next truth hits hard. Wanting more is not enough. Desire alone doesn't transform a life. Motivation alone doesn't sustain change. Motivation is emotional. It comes and goes. It's influenced by mood, sleep, praise, disappointment, and environment. Discipline, on the other hand, is structural. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks who you've decided to be. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the perfect condition. And what they don't realize is that waiting is itself a habit, one that quietly reinforces average outcomes. Psychologically, motivation is tied to dopamine. It spikes when something feels new, exciting, or rewarding. But dopamine always returns to baseline. That's why New Year's energy fades by February. Discipline doesn't rely on chemical highs. It relies on identity and repetition. It's built when you do what needs to be done, even when there's no emotional payoff. Think about the people you admire the most, the ones who seem consistent, grounded, and effective. What you're really witnessing is not constant motivation. It's trained behavior. They've reduced the number of daily decisions they need to make. They don't debate with themselves every morning about whether they'll show up. They've already decided. That's discipline. It's freedom disguised as structure. Philosophically, discipline is a form of self-respect. It's the ability to honor commitments made by your past self to your future self. Average living happens when the present moment dominates all decision making. You choose what feels good now, even if it costs you later. Discipline flips that equation. It allows the future to have a voice in the present. It's you saying, I'm willing to be uncomfortable today so I can be unstoppable tomorrow. A lot of people misunderstand discipline as punishment, as restriction, as a harsh way to live. But in reality, discipline is the removal of chaos. When you don't have discipline, your life is ruled by impulse. You start things and don't finish them. You react instead of respond. You drift instead of direct. Discipline creates clarity. It simplifies life by narrowing your options to the ones that align with your values. And clarity is powerful because confusion drains energy. Eric Thomas often emphasizes that pain is temporary, but quitting lasts forever. That's not just motivational language, it's psychological truth. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen your self-trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken it. Over time, that self-trust or lack of it becomes your internal compass. People who struggle with consistency often aren't lazy. They just don't trust themselves anymore. Discipline rebuilds that trust one action at a time. And let's be honest, discipline isn't glamorous. No one applauds you for waking up early when no one is watching. No one celebrates the quiet hours of practice, study, or preparation, but that's exactly why it works. Discipline compounds in silence. Average chases recognition. Excellence chases mastery. When you stop needing external validation to do the work, you unlock a level of focus most people never experience. There will be days in 2026 when you don't feel like showing up. That's guaranteed. The question isn't whether those days will come, it's who you'll listen to when they do. Your emotions will give you reasons. Discipline will give you direction. And direction beats emotion every time. Feelings change, systems don't. If you want a practical shift, stop asking yourself, how do I feel today? And start asking, what does the standard require today? That question moves you from reaction to responsibility. It reminds you that discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Miss a day, don't miss twice. Fall off, get back on quickly. Momentum is built by recovery, not by flawlessness. As 2026 unfolds, remember this: motivation may start the journey, but discipline decides how far you go. And when discipline becomes your default, average no longer has a place to stand. Once discipline becomes part of how you move, once showing up is no longer a debate, but a default, you start to notice something deeper at work. Two people can put in similar effort and still get very different results. That's when you realize this next truth. Results don't begin with behavior. They begin with belief. If you don't upgrade the way you think, the way you interpret struggle, and the way you see yourself, discipline alone will eventually feel heavy. Mindset is the framework that gives discipline meaning. Most people try to change outcomes without questioning the internal lens through which they view the world. They want new results, but keep the same assumptions. They want growth, but hold on to identity. Ties that were shaped in survival mode. Psychologically, the mind is constantly filtering reality. It decides what you notice, what you ignore, and how you explain what happens to you. If your internal narrative is limited, your external life will reflect that limitation no matter how hard you work. A fixed mindset doesn't always sound negative. Sometimes it sounds practical. It says things like, this is just how I am, or I'm not built for that, or people like me don't get those opportunities. These statements feel honest, but they're often inherited beliefs, not examined truths. They're conclusions formed in past environments that no longer serve your future. Average thinking accepts these conclusions as facts. Elevated thinking challenges them as hypotheses. Philosophically, this is about agency. Do you see yourself as the author of your life or a character trapped in someone else's script? When you believe that your circumstances define your limits, you give away your power. When you believe that your interpretation of circumstances matters more than the circumstances themselves, you reclaim it. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means engaging with it deliberately. It means saying, this is hard, but hard is not a verdict. It's an invitation to grow. Eric Thomas often talks about mindset as a separator, and he's right. You can hear it in how people talk about setbacks. Average mindset asks, why is this happening to me? Growth mindset asks, what is this teaching me? That shift doesn't eliminate pain, but it gives pain a purpose. And purpose changes how much weight you can carry. When struggle has meaning, it stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like preparation. Another critical aspect of mindset is time perspective. Average thinking is short term. It prioritizes immediate relief over long-term development. It avoids discomfort even if that discomfort is necessary for progress. Upgraded thinking stretches time. It allows you to endure temporary frustration because you're anchored to a future vision. You stop asking, how do I escape this moment? And start asking, who am I becoming because of this moment? That question changes everything. Your mindset also determines what you tolerate. If you believe you're capable of more, mediocrity starts to feel uncomfortable. If you believe you're limited, mediocrity feels safe. The danger is that the mind will always look for evidence to confirm what it already believes. If you see yourself as average, you'll unconsciously collect proof that average is all you can be. If you see yourself as evolving, you'll interpret challenges as steps, not stops. This is why environment matters, not because it controls you, but because it influences your thinking. The conversations you listen to, the content you consume, the people you spend time with, they all feed your internal dialogue. Upgrading your mindset sometimes means changing what you allow into your mental space, not out of arrogance, but out of intention. You can't think new thoughts while constantly rehearsing old limitations. And let's be clear, upgrading your mindset doesn't mean pretending everything is positive. It means being honest without being hopeless. It means acknowledging fear without letting it drive. It means understanding that confidence is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to move forward despite it. Growth-minded people aren't fearless, they're committed. They move with clarity even when certainty is unavailable. As you move through 2026, pay attention to the stories you tell yourself, especially in moments of stress. Those stories are shaping your identity in real time. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your beliefs. Change the beliefs and behavior follows naturally. So here's what to sit with. Before you ask for better results, ask whether your thinking is strong enough to support the life you say you want. Because a new future requires a new way of seeing. When you combine a decision to rise, the discipline to show up, and a mindset that can actually sustain growth, there's one inevitable outcome if you stay consistent long enough. Transformation, not a surface level change, not a temporary burst of effort, a deep internal shift that alters how you think, how you move, and how you see yourself in the world. This is where the idea of becoming unrecognizable by the end of 2026 comes in, not to others first, but to yourself. Most people underestimate how powerful gradual change can be. They think transformation has to be loud, dramatic, or immediate. Psychologically, we're biased towards sudden breakthroughs because they feel exciting. But real evolution is often quiet. It happens in routines, in private decisions, in moments where no one is watching and nothing feels extraordinary. And because it's quiet, many people stop too soon. They don't see instant results, so they assume nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, identity is being reshaped. Philosophically, this is the process of becoming. You are not a fixed entity. You are a pattern in motion. Every repeated action reinforces a version of you. When those actions change consistently, the identity attached to them must eventually change too. That's how habits turn I into character. And character is what carries you when motivation fades, when life disrupts your plans, when circumstances test your resolve. Becoming unrecognizable doesn't mean abandoning your values or pretending to be someone you're not. It means shedding the limitations you've mistaken for your personality. It means letting go of the version of you that needed excuses to feel safe. Growth often requires grieving who you used to be, not because that version was weak, but because it was built for a different chapter, and holding on to it will cost you the next one. There's also a social dimension to this transformation that people don't talk about enough. When you change, your environment reacts. Some people will be inspired. Others will feel threatened. Some will try to pull you back to the familiar version of you because it makes them more comfortable. This is where accountability becomes critical. Not accountability to other people's expectations, but to your own vision. You have to decide whose opinion carries the most weight, the crowd's comfort or your future's potential. Eric Thomas often emphasizes sacrifice, and this is where sacrifice becomes real. Not just sacrificing time or energy, but sacrificing identity, sacrificing the need to be understood by everyone, sacrificing the comfort of blending in. Average is socially reinforced because it doesn't disrupt anything. Transformation does, but disruption is often the price of growth. You can't evolve and remain convenient to everyone around you. Another key element of becoming unrecognizable is intentional learning. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens through exposure to new ideas, new skills, and new standards. Reading, listening, practicing, failing, refining. This is the loop. The people who change the most aren't the most talented. They're the most teachable. They approach life as students know, T as finished products. And humility, not confidence, is often what unlocks the next level. Risk also plays a role here. You can't become someone new while doing only what feels safe. Transformation requires calculated courage. It requires stepping into situations where your old identity no longer works. That discomfort isn't a sign you're unprepared. It's a sign you're expanding. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. It's to stop letting fear decide. As 2026 unfolds, the real question isn't how fast you move, but how consistently you align your actions with the person you're becoming. Transformation isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Are your daily choices pointing toward growth or familiarity, toward evolution or repetition? Over time, direction beats intensity. And one day, quietly, unexpectedly, you'll look back and realize you think differently, respond differently, and expect more from yourself than you ever did before. That's when you'll know the work mattered. So here's the final thought to carry forward. Don't aim to impress the world this year. Aim to become someone your past self wouldn't recognize, but your future self will thank.